Hello, everyone, and welcome to Africa Fire Mission's weekly virtual training session. My name is Mike, and I'm the programs director here at Africa Fire Mission. We're so happy you took time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's training. Today, we're joined by Mark Vanderfeist. Mark's uh, internationally known fire instructor. He's worked with AFM for a couple years now. All around a great guy. Happy to have him here teaching today's class. Before we get started, just a couple of administrative notes. If you stick around for at least 70% of today's training, which is usually about 40 or 45 minutes, you'll receive a certificate of attendance for today's class. Uh, if you get cut off or you run out of bundles, you can't make it through today's class, I would encourage you to check out our webpage, www.africafiremission.org. If you go to that resources tab, there's a lot of great information. There's a link to the training. You can find a folder there where you can get a recording of today's training or any of the other trainings that we've done so far this year. Watch the recording, answer a couple questions about what you learned, and we'll get you a certificate of attendance for those trainings as well. Encourage you to check that out. There's a bunch of other free resources available there. Go ahead and check those things out. Keep an eye on our webpage as we move into the new year. Our training link will change, so keep your eye out for that. And the next couple weeks, you'll see a new registration link. So I just wanted to remind you all of that as well. When we get finished at the top of the hour, we'll transition into our tea time, which is just a time where you can ask more questions about today's class, or just a chance for some networking where you could reach out and talk with firefighters from throughout Africa. So if you've got the ability, I'd ask you all to stick around for that as well. At this point in time, we're going to get going with today's training, and I'm going to pass things over to my good friend Mark to get us started.
All right, thank you, Mike, and everybody. Good afternoon to where you are. It's good morning where I am, but good afternoon to you today. And it's good to be with you folks again. Just fresh back from being in Nairobi in Kenya there last month, and we're back here again together. So it's good to be with you folks once more. So our topic today for this week is incident scene communications, and not a very sexy topic or exciting topic, but this look at communications is important because without communications on the fire ground or just in general, nothing is going to transpire or nothing is going to actually occur or happen as it needs to. Just as right now, we're trying to communicate through a certain medium, which is in this case Zoom. We're trying to effectively learn something. We're effectively trying to instruct or teach or receive something that's going to benefit us down the road. So every facet of our life is involved or involves communications rather. And that's why it's important for us to be well aware of what does this involve? What does instant scene communications really involve? And how can I be an effective communicator when I'm on the fire ground or even in the training grounds or the fire station in general, period. I know with us teaching by Zoom, it's a little difficult to have two-way communication. This is one of the negatives of doing a lesson like this. However, how many of you that are joining in right now today, if you could just even send a thumbs up in the comment section, how many of you are an incident commander or an officer or could be the incident commander or officer when you arrive on scene? Let's see how many thumbs kind of get jumped up there. All right, so we got a couple, it looks like. Okay. All right. Well, that's good because even though so those who are going to be or could be the incident commander, this is relevant to you, but even if you're not, you're just a firefighter who's on scene working under the officer or under the incident commander, it's still important because we still need to communicate. There's still got to be two-way communication between the firefighter and the officer who's supervising or overseeing the operation. So let's get my screen shared and okay, and we're gonna start with here we are. Okay, so we're gonna follow along this little PowerPoint here. We might not get through all of it with our allotted time, but we'll do our best. We don't want to rush communicating because when you talk too fast, which sometimes we do, we tend to miss information and kind of gloss over things. All right, so as I kind of lent into, there's an element of importance to being an effective communicator. And one of those facts is going to be the fact that we need to have information. We need to be able to receive information and pass it on. So I'm in my rank where I'm working right now. I'm at the fire station. This is where I'm actually getting off duty this morning and heading home. But where I am right now, where I work, I am a battalion chief. So I'm always going to be the person in command. So I have to have the ability to pass information from myself onto the firefighters who are on scene working for me. But if I don't pass information on to them, they're not going to be effective. They're going to be ineffective. So it's important because it's going to be a way for us in two-way fashion. I pass it on and they're going to receive it. And then they're going to pass on to me information so that I can receive information to then make decisions, maybe change our actions, maybe change our strategy, and so on. So that's one of the main reasons why it's important. It allows us to pass and receive information from the two parties. It starts right away with our dispatch. So it doesn't matter what country, what part of the world we live in, there's going to be a system in place that when someone needs help, they're going to call a certain number. And when they call that number, a person will answer. They start to take information from the person on the phone so that they can then dispatch or send out the fire brigades and the fire departments to respond to that call and to the address. And so effective incident scene communication starts with our dispatch, with our call takers, with the men and women who sit at a desk and wait for the phone to ring and start asking questions and taking information. It starts with them. And if they can receive good information from the person calling them, that's going to help us as the responding fire brigade member because now I know more. I'll give you an example. If someone were to call in right now to where you're at your station, and they simply call and you answer the phone and they say, "Yep, there's a fire. Here's the address," and they hang up. Well, we don't know anything. All we know is the address, if we could even hear the person speak, and there's a fire. Well, what kind of fire? Is it a vehicle on fire? Is it a passenger bus on fire? Is it an airplane on fire? Is it a building? Is it a house? Is it an apartment building? Is it a shanty town kind of structure in the slums? We have no idea what's on fire. Is it a garbage can on fire? So that's an example of a person calling and not asking proper questions or not given the chance to ask questions to get proper information to pass on to the responding fire brigades. So it starts with dispatch. So hopefully where you're stationed at, you have some influence and you're going to have a bit of contributing factor to make your dispatch or your call takers effective by having them ask good questions and getting good information so they can pass it on to you as that responding brigade member or brigade officer. I've used this word a little bit already, and you'll probably hear me say it quite a bit again, and that is effective. Effective and efficient. Everything we have to do in the fire service and the fire department has to be both effective and efficient. And with good communication, we are then able to be effective. It helps us to maximize the crew's efficiency. That's a fancy number of words that simply means that when I have two or three firefighters or fire brigade members with me, and that's all I have, just we'll say three. I have three fire brigade members. That's it, and myself. I'm the one in command, so I'm pointing, directing, and I'm leading the operation. I only have three sets of hands. That's six individual hands to do the job of whatever it might be. I need to make sure that those hands that are working are going to do the most work that they can do with what I have, as far as only three people. That's what efficiency means. I'm being efficient. I'm maximizing the use of what I have. And so good communication is going to allow me to make my crews efficient because now I can assign a task or I can give orders to individuals that I know are going to be carried out effectively, that are important to be carried out now because of what I'm seeing when I'm arrived on scene. And it's also based upon the information I have. So I know that perhaps it's important for us to go and rescue those people now before I put a hose line in place and apply water. So then to be efficient with my crew, I may go assign two firefighters to go take a ground ladder and get up to that window and knock off that rescue. And then the third firefighter, while they're doing that, I want you to start pulling a hose line off, get that branch at the front door, and then get my pumping gear and get water to the nozzle so that when we're done the rescue, I can then take the hose line in, and start applying water. That's an example of being efficient. And that's all based upon the information that you have received and you communicating that information out in terms of this is what I want you to do now. Right. So that's how it makes us to be effective and efficient on the fire ground. You're going to see some other big fancy words here. All right. The one there is strategic, tactical, and task. Strategic simply means that's the person at the top of the food chain, like the battalion chief, the incident commander. They're the ones at the top, kind of looking down like a bird's eye view, and they're looking at the big picture and then developing their strategy of how they're going to accomplish and rectify that situation. The tactical, that simply means that's the plays or that's the actions that we're gonna verbally call out to have the strategy come to life. So tactics will be using a ground ladder, applying water to the fire, doing a search, establishing water supply. Those are all tactical objectives and actions that can be done to meet the overall strategy. The task level simply means these are the worker bees. These are the people, these are the firefighters, these are the brigade members who are going to be taking the orders from the incident commander and putting those actions in play and fulfilling and completing them. That's the task level. So there's always going to be two-way communication between the worker bees and the queen bee, right? The incident commander and the fire brigade members. It has to be two-way communication in order for us to be effective and to be efficient. So how can we communicate effectively? There are two main types that we are able to communicate in the fire service. And again, doesn't matter where we are. Right now, you're in a very warm climate, which I wish I was there with you because right now it is snowing where I am. It is in Celsius. It is -3 degrees Celsius right now, so it's cold. I don't like it. My bones are feeling the effects of cold with arthritis. So I wish I was where you guys are. But doesn't matter where we are. Cold climate, warm climate, Africa, North America. These two basic types exist, and that's going to be by a radio, portable radio, where I can, through a great distance, I'm able to communicate through a communications device, or the old-fashioned way, which is face to face. That is you and me talking together, nice and close, face to face. So You can hear me clearly, I hear you clearly, and so on. There are benefits to both, and there are also negatives to both. Let's look at the radio one first. Radio, the benefit. I am able to communicate over great distances. So if I have a large geographical area, large building, and I'm stationed as incident commander on the front of the building or at one point of the building, and I have brigade members working someplace else, and I cannot visually see them, I can still communicate by a portable radio because it's a great distance away, and that transmission is carried through that medium to communicate to them and then back to me. So I can, over a great distance, I can communicate very easily. It can be recorded. So as we look at writing our reports, maybe doing investigations, we can get a copy of the recording and listen to it again to hear exactly what was said. That's some of the benefits. The negatives of a radio is it only allows one person to speak at a time. That's a negative because now if I have to speak and give a message, I have to wait until firefighter Smith finishes talking on the radio, and then I can cut in and give my message. So it's very limiting in terms of how many people can actually speak at a time. Depending upon the quality of your radio, the distance between the two people, and other infrastructure matters, sometimes it's going to be staticky as far as the transmission across, not clear, so you can't quite hear it. It may get cut out. Radios work on batteries, and sometimes the batteries die. So when the battery's dead, the radio's dead. That means I can no longer communicate by the radio. So these are some of the negatives of a radio. Another negative is going to be all I'm hearing is a voice. So all I get to hear on my end is a voice speaking to me. I cannot see their facial expressions nor their body language, but I can hear the tone of their voice on the radio. And sometimes when we look at later on, hopefully this morning, when we communicate, we do communicate with facial expressions and with body language. And that sometimes communicates more than with words. And that kind of lends into face to face. This is some of the benefits of face to face communication. When you and I are speaking together face to face, like a friend having coffee or tea, having tea time, and you sit down with your coworker or with your friend, and you're face to face speaking, you're able to pick up their facial expressions. You can witness their body language. You're able to pick up more on the tone of their voice with respect to what they're saying and how they're saying. Are they saying it sarcastically? Are they saying it very humorously? Are they saying it in a very demeaning or a very sinister way? So all those attributes we can pick up better when we're face to face. We can also speak a lot quicker face to face than we can over a radio. It's easier for you and I to converse uh, over 30 seconds back and forth than I can in the same time frame on a radio. It takes too much time. I have to click the mic. I have to then speak. When I'm done speaking, the person then has to listen. Then they have to then click their mic and then they respond back. And it starts to slow that process right down. So sometimes on the fire ground, as the incident commander, it is easier for us to communicate face to face, and that's a very preferred method of communication. I can tell you from my experience again, when I'm in the incident command seat and I have to speak to my captains or anybody for that matter, I will sometimes walk over to them and I will talk to them face to face while I have my radio and this another person talking to me in the radio at the same time. And I'm doing two things at once. So I'm able to quickly say, "Hey Joe, take the ladder and go there." And then the radio respond back to the message that was being given to me on the radio as well, right? That's effective communications. And sometimes in face-to-face communicating, if you know your coworker well enough, it's kind of like having your husband or your wife, right? If you're married, you know what I'm talking about. When you get to know your wife and husband very well, you can sometimes communicate just with a look and no words. Especially if you're, we'll put it this way, if you're a parent, I'm a parent, I'm a father, I have 3 children. When my kids were growing up as young children, they knew what the look meant. If I gave my kids a look of anger or a look of disappointment or dissatisfaction, they knew what that meant without me saying one word. On the fire ground, my firefighters know me, and they know that if I give a certain look, what that look will mean, and they can act on it. That's effective communication that's done face to face sometimes. Okay, so we kind of beat that one down. Let's look at some other effective factors of communicating the fire ground in terms of your SOGs and SOPs, right? Fancy acronym that simply stands for Standard Operating Guidelines or Standard Operating Procedures or Policy. Depends on how you want to call it. Regardless, it's a document. That's what it is. It's a piece of paper or a small booklet, and it simply is what you refer back to tell you how to do your job. So in the case of communicating, we should, and I say we, meaning more so you in your department, you should have some kind of document, a standard operating guideline, excuse me, an SOG or an SOP that kind of spells out. It could be a 1 page, it could be 2 pages, it could be 3, doesn't matter, but actually details and lists out how we should communicate on the fire ground as a department. So that way it's uniform. Anybody can go back and look at it, they can read it, and if they are all following it, they are then going to be able to communicate as a department cohesively as a team. So what kind of items should be included in your SOGs? Well, one should be the language. What kind of language are we going to use? And I'll refer to where I am in North America. Uh, we use what's called plain text language. What that means is just as you and I are speaking right now, just as I'm talking to you, this is plain text language. I'm not using fancy terms. I'm not using a bunch of acronyms that only certain people might know. I'm not using what's called 10 codes, 10-4, 10-20, 10-100, 10-50. We're not speaking with those 10 codes, right? Because not everybody knows what those 10 codes are, and 10 codes can change between department to department. What might be 10-10 to me in my department might mean something else to a different department. And that's where confusion can set in. So plain text language removes all those barriers in terms of not being able to understand each other. And by simply using simple everyday words, the majority of people on the fire ground will understand what is being said. It's like the English language. Right now, we're speaking English. It's my primary language. It may not be yours, but you understand because we can speak English. So because we both can speak English, we can communicate. And that's what is likened to plain text language, no different. If you're going to use certain terminology, make it common, standardize it. That means that you're going to set certain terms in your document that says when you are on the radio speaking to somebody, you will always end your transmissions with over, for example. Or when you're receiving a transmission from somebody else, you will always verify by saying Roger back to the person. These standard terms, excuse me again, these standard terms, again, make us all work on the same page. And when we hear these terms being used, we know exactly what is being said and what they mean. Right? So If we never use the word Roger, you might think I'm actually calling a person named Roger. But in reality, what that word means in the radio world, if I'm talking on a radio, it means I've received your message. These standard terms, when we look at more so working over a portable radio, they're also phonetical, sorry, what's the right word? They're phonetically uh, used to allow us to pronounce them on the radio and for them to be heard easily on the radio by anybody. We all speak differently. We have maybe different accents, different ways in which we say certain words. And depending upon where we come from in the world, when we speak on the radio or even over the phone sometimes, um, our accent, our speech, how we speak, and so on sometimes has an impact on what's being said and it being understood by the receiver. So using certain words like the word Roger, go ahead, I acknowledge, received, those kind of standard words, uh, they're phonetically used so that when they're said, doesn't matter who says it, a person with my accent can say Roger, a person with your accent can say Roger, and we'll both hear it and know it means I received the message. And that's the purpose of having common terminology. If we're going to use abbreviations, they have to also be listed ahead of time so that we know what they are. So if I on the radio, I'm going to say, hey, we are responding to a MVC, you know that means motor vehicle collision. Doesn't matter what it is, you guys can make up your own acronyms. If it's unique to your department, that's fine. Uh, but as long as everybody knows what that acronym is ahead of time in your document, it's perfect. We also use the phonetic alphabet to spell out names. What that means is sometimes on the radio or on the phone, I meant to spell out someone's name or spell out a street name or something that doesn't quite sound right when I'm saying it. The person doesn't receive it, so I have to spell it out like letter by letter. And so there is actually a phonetic alphabet that is standard around the world, primarily used in the military, but adopted by everybody. That when we use words like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Golf, Hotel, India, Juliet, Kilo, Lima, Mike, November, Oscar, Papa, Quebec, Romeo, Sierra, Tango, Umbrella, Victoria, Whiskey, X-Ray, Yankee, Zulu, we know what those letters are referring to, what those words mean. It's the letter A, B, C, and so on through the alphabet. So we want to spell out in our document that we're going to use the phonetic alphabet and use it to spell out names so we can easily understand, oh, you're referring to this street or referring to that person in terms of getting a hold of them as you're trying to do your job. We also use numbers on the radio when we're communicating, even face to face. And again, depending upon the number that you're trying to communicate, if it's a multiple number, like the example set here before you, you can see on the screen, 2200. If I say 2200 on the radio or over the phone or even face to face, you might not understand what I'm saying. It's somewhat foreign. So if I spell out 2200, now you know I'm giving you the numbers 2200, which means 2200, for example. So we always spell out the numbers individually as well. That's also part of our documentation for in our SOGs and also in our SOPs. Keywords, right? If I have certain situations where I need to make an announcement, and if I say one word, everybody knows what that announcement's going to be. So, for example, you see the word Mayday is on the screen. That word Mayday is very commonly used when we are declaring a bad situation that involves a firefighter. If a firefighter is lost, trapped, or injured, we use the word Mayday. And what that means is it tells me on the fire ground, if I hear that, that a firefighter needs my help. That's a standard key word, as opposed to the word urgent or emergency traffic. Those two words can be used for anything else that does not involve a firefighter. An example of that might be your pump on your truck blew up. It overheated and it's now not working. That might be an urgent, urgent, urgent message. And then we all hear that and know, oh, there's a problem, but it's not a firefighter. As opposed to Mayday, 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 we all know a firefighter is in trouble and needs our help. We can also list off and detail what our evacuation process will look like in terms of how we're going to do it and what noisemakers or what sounds can we use to initiate the evacuation out of a building, for example. So we can use the air horn on our trucks. We can, on the radios, maybe send out a certain signal or a certain sound to tell us it's time to get out of the building now, right? That's part of our evacuation procedures. And it ties in with the keywords of Mayday or urgent or emergency traffic as well. There's a thing here called the order model, as you see here. And this is also part of standardization. There is a set method in which we speak on a radio and back and forth. That's what's called the order model. And it ensures that when I'm sending a message out, it actually is received and confirmed. So that's the key thing too. It's not just received, but also confirmed by the receiver. And that's how this order model works. So we're seeing here an example of how this kind of will transpire. So if I'm in command, I'm the incident commander, I'm going to on the radio say engine one from command. It's always, hey you, it's me. That's how we start off. So engine one, hey you, it's me from command. So then engine one will respond, this is engine one, go ahead command. So they have received the message of me calling them and they're confirming it by saying, go ahead. And then I give the message, hey, engine one, when you arrive on scene, advance the line to backup engine three on division two. So I sent my message out as far as what they are to do, their action, their order, and they're going to acknowledge that and let me know they've confirmed what I said by saying engine one acknowledges, advance hose line to division two to back up engine three. So they are repeating back to me what I told them. That's how they confirm to me they got the message. And then I confirm back engine one, that is correct. There is formality to the order method, to the order model, but it ensures that the message that I'm trying to send out or you're trying to send out is actually been received and is being confirmed to be received by the other party. So that's what the order model is. And if you take anything away from this right now, it's simply, as I said, it's hey you, it's me. That's how I begin my communication. Hey you, it's me. And you start talking at that point back and forth. That's what this little this slide here is saying at the very bottom, right? Hey you, it's me. This is a military protocol format, and that's where the order model is kind of based on where it comes from. Having standardization for communication in our documents, our SOG, SOPs, it also allows us then when we're done the call and we come back to the station, it allows us to fill out our reports or make our reports. So it allows us to give a standardized format for delivering reports. And this can be verbal reports or written on piece of paper or by computer. And by doing so, we have to include some information that is relevant, such as maybe progress reports, such as how is the team doing so far, as well as benchmarks. Benchmarks are a fancy name that simply means that when we accomplish a certain task, we declare that task completed. So for example, when if I'm doing a primary search on the first floor of a residential structure, when it's done, the benchmark is all clear, first floor. That's a task completed with the benchmark verbally declared, so we all know that's been done. And then we move on to the next task. So that's what benchmarks refer to. So we want to include them in our reports, and that can be, again, verbal or written. And having this standardized in our documents, our SOGs, SOPs will allow us, again, to be effective and efficient. An initial report, what does that mean? That initial report means when I first arrive on scene, I need to communicate to everybody else arriving what's happening, what's going on. And as you see here on your screen there in front of you, a couple of questions, right? What do you see? What are you going to do? What resources do you need? And then lastly, we always declare who's going to be in command. But those three questions, what you see, what you are going to do, what resources do you need, it helps to paint a picture. And we're painting a picture so that others who hear what I'm saying can, in their mind, visually see what I'm trying to tell them. So if I just simply arrive on scene and say, I'm Chief 68, Chief 68. Chief 68 arrived on scene, nothing showing, establishing command. That paints no picture for the crews that are responding. But if I arrive on scene and say, Chief 68 arrived on scene, I have a 2-story A-frame residential house with light smoke showing from the second floor rear bedroom on the Charlie side. We are advancing an 1.75-inch hose line from the first arriving engine to do an offensive attack. And I need the second due engine to secure a water supply for the first arriving engine. Chief 68 establishing command. I've now painted a bit of a picture that the responding crews that are coming in can visually see a 2-story home, A-frame style roof. There's smoke in the back of the building on the second floor on the Charlie side, and they know when they arrive on scene who gets there first and who gets there second, what their jobs are going to be, because I assigned those tasks to the incoming units with my initial report. This initial report is one of the key building blocks of the fireground going in a successful direction. It's like little dominoes. If you play dominoes, we line dominoes up in a certain way, and then when we hit one domino, the whole line goes with it. If I don't set that first domino block correctly and in the right way, when it's knocked over, it can either lead that fireground or the whole operation to a successful outcome, or it can lead to a very bad outcome. And it starts with your initial report when you first arrive on scene. You, as that arriving officer or first arriving firefighter, doesn't matter who you are, if you're the first one on scene and you have the ability to communicate by radio or even by phone, because that is one of our ways to communicate now, is by phone, you need to paint that picture so people can visually see in their minds what you see. They know what you're going to do, and they know what they need to do when they get on scene. And then, of course, who to report to when they do get there. That's the whole that's the whole crux of the initial report. All right, some of the common benchmarks. I'm not going to go through a lot of these, but I've already mentioned one, like primary search, all clear. Same thing for secondary search. When we have certain key tasks that we have completed, we assign a particular benchmark to it. So when we say that benchmark over the radio or over the phone or in our reports, we know what that refers to. And you're seeing here a couple examples of what those benchmarks may look like. Designations. Right? So to make things standardized, common, we all know what we're doing. If I use certain terms like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, that might mean nothing to you because you have no idea what that's supposed to refer to. Whereas where I am right now, when I tell the firefighters, hey, I'm on the Alpha side of the building, they know what side of the building that refers to. So we can use names like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, or we can use directions, north, south, east, west. Some departments will use numbers, side one, side two, side three, and side four. But they're going to use either one of those three. It's communicated ahead of time in the SOG or SOP saying we will always label the building in this format. Side one is always facing the street. Side two is going to be to the left. And then side three is opposite side one, and so on. Or we always use Alpha Bravo in a clockwise fashion. Doesn't matter what you choose. It's as long as it's been communicated ahead of time so we all know. So when you use those words, everybody knows what that refers to. Same thing with different sectors, right? So we can use fancy words like division, which refers to a floor, right? A level. So in a multi-story building, like at a hotel, for example, you can say that if it has 5 floors or 5 levels, Division One, Division Two, Division Three, that refers to what level you are going to be on or where you want us to go to do our job, right? So that's a common term as well. Radio channels, right? Some radios will have multiple channels, like channel one, channel two, channel three, that they can use. And again, depending upon your department's process and what you want to have standardized, if you only have one channel, that's easy. If you have no radios, that's easy because this is not relevant. You got to find a different way to communicate. But if you do have a portable radio at your disposal that you can use, you want to make sure we know that we're always communicating on this channel, always. Or we may be dispatched on the one channel, but then we get to the actual fire scene, we switch the radio to channel two, and that's what we're going to operate on the entire time. Something else too is going to be sensitive information. And what that means is we are not wanting to broadcast to the public certain things, like maybe people's names, right? If I'm there for a medical situation and the person I'm dealing with, I have their name, I don't want to broadcast on a portable radio or by cell phone or by any means. Oh, hey, I got Brent Smith here with me today, and he has a big open gash in his head. That's sensitive information, right? You don't want to send that stuff out. Same thing for firefighters. We do not want to be broadcasting firefighters' names over the radio if they are, for example, hurt, lost, or trapped in a mayday. We don't want to say, hey, it's firefighter Tom. And so now people listening in may hear that, and now they're going to know what we know, right? So we sometimes want to hide sensitive information from the public so that they're not hearing what we're talking about, and we're protecting the privacy of people that we're dealing with. Okay, we're getting to the last little bit of our time, and I want to make sure we hit this here because this is really, I think, one of the more important parts, and that is the 5 C's of radio communication. So if you are using a portable radio, or if you're not, let's say using a cell phone or even face to face, these 5 C's that we're going to go through real quick are very much relevant to being an effective communicator. All right, the first C is for conciseness. What this means is I want to keep my message short and to the point. There are some firefighters who love to talk on the radio. They actually are a full-time radio disc jockey, but do firefighting on the part-time side because they talk so much on the radio that that's what they are. They're a full-time radio disc jockey. That's what we call them, a DJ. We want to keep our messages short, to the point, because we're eating up valuable airtime on the radio or even face to face. We don't have time to talk for an hour. I have 3 seconds. So what is it? Like, I need a ladder. Okay, great, go get it. That's short and concise, right? So we got to make sure we keep our messages concise. What does this involve? It involves you as the person sending the message to real quick think, okay, I want to say this. What is the quickest way for me to say it? And you think before you speak, so that when you do speak, you're speaking the message that you want to send out in a very short and concise manner and not eating up a lot of time to do so. So, what I'm doing right now to explain this is the opposite because I'm not being short and concise with explaining what conciseness means. The second C, clarity. We need to be very clear with what we're saying. And this kind of all this here, these bullet points you're seeing on the slide in front of you, this is a summation of what I just went over the last 40 minutes as far as standardized terms, plain text language, all that. That's clarity. So everybody knows and can understand what's being said. What would make this not clear would be if I'm talking Chinese and you're speaking English, or you're speaking Swahili and I'm speaking English, and we're trying to talk back and forth in our native tongues, and we have no idea what we're saying, right? That's not clarity. Confidence. That's the third, number three. Be confident. When you are going to speak over a radio or on the phone or even face to face, you need to show an air of confidence and sound confident. That requires taking a nice deep breath, calming yourself down, and then speaking very calmly. When you are trying to speak in a very rushed manner because you're excited, there's something going on, obviously pretty bad, and you want to get your message out. When you speak very quickly, or when you speak with an air of fear, like you're afraid of what's happening or what you're seeing, that in itself will have far-reaching effects as now everybody else is hearing you speak in that way. And now they're going to start being afraid or panic, or they may start to get amped up or ramped up to being to act quickly without thinking. Right. So be confident. Take a deep breath. Sound very calm. Speak very smoothly, very clearly, and concisely, and that helps you to have that air of confidence when you're speaking on the radio. Fourth, number four, have control. Right. That means personal control of the radio. Like I said a little while ago, there's some firefighters and they love to talk on the radio. And so when they get the chance to speak on it, they hog, or they talk for so long, they eat up all the airtime on that radio and nobody else can speak. So by you taking control, meaning that when it's my turn to speak, I'm going to speak only when needed. And when I do, it's going to be very concise and to the point. Because sometimes certain messages that we want to relay to the officer or to the incident commander, sometimes they're not that important. They can wait, maybe till later. And so you got to figure out, does this message have to get to him now, or can it wait till later? If he needs to know it now, then I'm going to send it. If it can wait until later, I'll wait until I see him face to face, and then I can let the person know, right? So that's part of being control. It's part of prioritizing what needs to be sent. The last one, number 5, the fifth C, is capability. And what that means is you have the ability to use your listening skills to hear what's being said to you, right? So communicating is not just you speaking, it's also you listening. So if someone is sending me a message, I am listening to what's being said. And sometimes when I'm trying to listen, there might be too much noise or too many people talking. So I may have to move. It may mean that I have to move somewhere else so I can hear. It's quieter. I'm away from the noise. I can now actually hear what's being said. That's part of being capable. It also involves knowing how to use the equipment so that if I am using a portable radio or a cell phone or other devices that are being used for communications, I know exactly how to use it. And that means if I'm using a portable radio, it means I know where to hold that radio to my mouth, how far away, what angle it should be on. I need to know that when I'm going to speak, I have to actually press the mic, wait a second or two, and then start talking. Because if I start talking at the same time as I press the mic, I'm going to cut off part of my message. It's not going to go through all the way. Right? That's knowing your equipment. And when you know your equipment and have good listening skills, it means you are capable to communicate effectively, right? So those are the 5 C's that we have here. Conciseness, right? Being concise. Clarity, being very clear when you're speaking. Having the confidence to speak. Taking control of yourself, your emotions, and the radio chatter. And then lastly, being very capable of using your equipment when you are communicating on on the fire ground there. Let's just real quick, I'll go through this. What factors can contribute to you being an effective communicator as well, besides what's been mentioned already? But if you're in command, if you're the person in command, sometimes it's best to have a person to help you to be in that position, meaning you may need an extra body to be with you, and they can be what's called a scribe, and they can actually write down what's being said on the radio or what's being sent to you for messages. They can write that down so that you can look back to it later and go, what did Captain Smith say to me there about 10 minutes ago? And they can look back, oh, he said this. Ah, okay, great. Right. So it's a way of keeping a record of what's being transmitted and what's being verbally sent to me in that command function. And they're there to be essentially a receptionist or a secretary, but we call them a scribe in that function. We also will use a tactical worksheet, right? So this is going to be a pre-printed piece of paper that I have, and on that I can write things in, but it has information that prompts my brain to think about certain things like setting up accountability system, making sure I have enough water, making sure I have EMS arriving on scene. That's part of my tactical worksheet. And it also helps me to refer back when I'm writing things and filling things in, what I may have missed or what I may have already signed to certain people. More importantly, make sure you're in a very quiet place. If you're in command, you need to think and listen to what's being sent to you, and that sometimes involves having to be in a very quiet place. So if it's noisy, move someplace else to where it's going to be quiet. Use the 5 C's of radio communication. That's going to help you be a very effective incident commander when you're communicating with the fire ground. If every firefighter has access to a portable radio, that's the best. But if you don't, because I've only got 2 radios, so one's with the incident commander, and then one's with the officer, so be it, right? But if everybody can have one, great. It means everybody can communicate. But if we don't, or if we cannot, because of money, logistics, there's only 1 or 2 left for us to use, then we have to use them in a very wise way for us to be effective. So right now we're at our hour, and I have a lot more to go through, but I don't want to rush through all this stuff. And I think where we've got up to is a very good point because it's been so far very positive in terms of how we can be an effective communicator in the fireground, as opposed to looking at the negative side of it and what we sometimes find ourselves doing with bad habits. All right. So on this note, I'll turn this back over to Mike and you guys, and I guess we'll enter ourselves into a little tea time and take it from there.
Thank you, Mark. What a great presentation. Lots of great information. Communication is such a vital component of what we do. Can really make the difference between how an incident goes, whether it goes smoothly or not. So it's great information. Really appreciate that. Uh, at this point in time, we're going to wrap up the formal portion of our training, but I want you guys to stick around at least for a few moments here so we can take some questions and things like that. Let me just wrap us up with a big thank you to everyone for taking your time and your bundles to join us for today's training. Big thanks to Mark for sharing his knowledge on the subject with us today as well. We look forward to working together again in the future. We've got plenty of seats here available, so if you know anyone that's interested in this training you think can benefit, please feel free to share that registration link. Also, please note, let's see, the 18th, I believe, is going to be our last training for the year before we take a little break over the holidays there. When we take that break, there'll be a new registration link, so please keep an eye out for that. If you get emails from AFM, we'll include that new registration link there. We'll be posting it on our Facebook groups, our WhatsApp groups that we have out there. If you're not getting any of that stuff, go to our webpage, www.africafiremission.org, and you'll be able to find a link there for that new registration link. Wait till after Christmas to check that out. We'll resume our training again on, I believe, the 8th of January. So please join us again next week. We've got one or two more classes yet this year. Thank you for your time, and we hope to see you all again.